You're listening to the Matt the Stat Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matt the Stat, where we talk about football, baseball, basketball, and everything sports. So today, for my show, I'll be talking to you guys about the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Philadelphia Eagles in the season opener to kick off the new NFL season 2025. And got a lot coming up for you guys. You don't want to miss it. I'll give you guys a recap and analysis of the game. But before I get into the game, hope you guys are enjoying your Friday afternoon. I have certainly been enjoying my Friday afternoon. A gorgeous day. I really can't complain. Maybe a little hot outside, but other than that, I'm revved up and ready to go. And well, I've got my first game to cover for you guys for the new 2025 NFL season, and it's a division rivalry game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And you can't kick off the NFL season better than a rivalry between the Cowboys and the Eagles. But a lot of fireworks happened before the game even started, which I will elaborate more on a little later on in the show. But the Cowboys and Eagles facing off. Of course, we all know about the Philadelphia Eagles. They are the Super Bowl defending champions. They beat up on the Kansas City Chiefs 47-21 in the Super Bowl last year. So the Dallas Cowboys, they are coming off a miserable season last year when they finished 7-10. Dak Prescott ended up tearing his hamstring. He ended up having to have surgery. He looked really good throughout camp. It didn't look like the hamstring was bothering him. And here we go. Cowboys and Eagles meet up last night on Thursday Night Football on NBC. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth had the call on NBC doing the game. So let's jump right into it. Cowboys, they start with the ball to begin the game, and they start with a Javonte Williams run, then an end around to Kevontae Turpin, then a Prescott completion to George Pickens before a play-action pass to CeeDee Lamb towards the sideline. And it was kind of on a double move for CeeDee Lamb, a big completion down the field that put the Cowboys inside the Eagles' 10-yard line. And then the drive was capped off by a Javonte Williams rushing touchdown. And just like that, the Cowboys' very first drive of the season, they go right down the field and score, and it's 7-0 Dallas. And then the Philadelphia Eagles, they get their first drive of the game. Jalen Hurts, he starts with a completion to tight end Dallas Goedert, then a Saquon Barkley run. Then Hurts would swing past one to Barkley for a big gain. Then a screen pass to Will Shipley, and the drive would be capped off by Hurts rushing touchdown. So just right away, the Eagles, they come out with a response after the great drive by the Dallas Cowboys. It's now tied at 7 apiece. Then the next drive for the Dallas Cowboys, they would start with Dak Prescott evading pressure, finding Lamb for a first down. Then on a 3rd and 2, Prescott would find Lamb for a gain would find Lamb again for a first down. Then a defensive pass interference on the Eagles. Then some tough running from Javonte Williams, and then once again Javonte Williams. The scoring drive would end with a Javonte Williams rushing touchdown. So 2 drives, 2 touchdowns. The Dallas Cowboys looked really good. They're up 14-7 on the Eagles. And I tell you what, from those first 2 drives of the games, those were 2 very impressive drives to begin the game for the Dallas Cowboys offense. And like I said in training camp when I was covering the Cowboys in Oxnard, there was more motions, more shifts. It didn't look like they were just standing still, kind of how the Mike McCarthy offense was. Brian Schottenheimer, he's utilizing guys in very different ways. So 2 impressive drives for the Cowboys. They're up 14-7. Then the Eagles, they would start with a Saquon Barkley run, then a Hurts completion to Smith for a first down, then Hurts would run for a first down, and then on a 3rd and 5, Hurts would run for a first down again, and, capped off by a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown. Now, we all know about Jalen Hurts. He can run, he can throw it, and, you kind of saw the Cowboys early on struggling. Sometimes they would play perfect coverage against the Eagles, and then they would forget to contain Jalen Hurts. And, well, he did give the Cowboys a rough time trying to keep him contained, and that was kind of ended up being the theme throughout the game. Cowboys having a hard time containing and setting the edge, and it was an issue for the Dallas Cowboys. But anyways, tied at 14, the Cowboys, they start with a bootleg pass to Ferguson, then a Prescott completion to Kevontae Turpin for a first down, then a taunting penalty on the Eagles. And it was that kind of game, it was kind of a chippy game, teams kind of pushing and shoving, but, nothing really out of the ordinary between the Cowboys and Eagles. You kind of expect that in a rivalry game. The emotions will be a little higher, the chippiness will be up there, so no surprises, but, you can't let it get out of control to where, you have guys getting taunting penalties and, undisciplined type penalties, I should say. You don't want that. So after the taunting penalty, then they would have a Kevontae Turpin run, but the Cowboys' drive would end up fizzling out. They would have to end up settling for a field goal, and it would make it 17-14 Dallas Cowboys. So the next drive for the Philadelphia Eagles, they would start with a Saquon Barkley run, then a Hurts deep pass to Jahan Dotson for a big gain, then a Hurts swing pass to Saquon Barkley, and it would be capped off by a Saquon Barkley rushing touchdown. Yes, the league leader in the league rushing leader last year, Saquon Barkley, with a rushing touchdown, and it's now 21-17 Philadelphia with under a minute to go in the second quarter before halftime. So the Cowboys, they would start with a defensive PI on the Eagles, then a roughing the passer on the Eagles. So literally two back-to-back penalties on the Philadelphia Eagles would end up moving the Cowboys pretty far ahead in field goal position. In field range. And then on a 3rd and 5, Prescott would complete a pass to Pickens for a first, then a completion to Lamb, which would set up another field goal right before halftime with like 3 seconds to go before halftime, and it would be good. And the Philadelphia Eagles lead the Cowboys only by 1, 21-20, going into halftime. But at this point in the game, really, both offenses looking extremely impressive. Every drive in that first half ended up with some scoring. And, you saw the Dallas Cowboys. I really like what I saw from the Dallas Cowboys. Offensively, I think they're going to be outstanding. The stuff that I saw, Dak Prescott, there was even one point where it looked like he was about to get sacked. He somehow ended up getting out of it, and he ended up getting, positive yards out of that play. So, Dak Prescott, the hamstring not bothering him one bit, kind of how I saw in training camp, even though, you never really know how a guy is doing after an injury like Dak Prescott suffered until they actually start playing in a different opponent jersey. But, you saw Dak Prescott. He made great decisions. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. Now, there was a couple of times throughout the game where he kind of threw the ball into double coverage, and there was a couple times where it probably should have been picked off, but it wasn't. But for the most part, you saw Dak Prescott making good decisions out there. The offense looks really impressive. CeeDee Lamb, he's poised for another big season. He was all over the place catching the football in this game. He looked really good through the first half of the game, and so did the Philadelphia Eagles. Pretty much every drive in the first half, whether if it was the Cowboys or the Eagles, ended up in some kind of points. So whether if it was, 7 or it was 3, you saw both sides offensively look really good, and they came up with answers. One team would come up with an answer, the next team would come up with another answer. So really both sides looking really good. in the first half. So we go to the second half of the game, and the Eagles, they start with a couple of completions to Dallas Goedert, then a Barkley run, and then a run from A.J. Dillon. Of course, anyone that knows A.J. Dillon, former Green Bay Packer, coming over and joining the Philadelphia Eagles to create a good 1-2 punch with Barkley and A.J. Dillon. So A.J. Dillon with a run. Then Hurts would be sacked by Marshawn Kneeland, and the Eagles would have to settle for another field goal. So it's now 24-20 Philadelphia. And the Cowboys, they get the ball back. They start with a Javonte Williams run. Then on a 3rd and 1, a toss to Williams for a first down. Then a big run from the former Philadelphia Eagle, Miles Sanders. Then a personal foul penalty on the Cowboys. And then there was a personal foul penalty on the Eagles. And then Miles Sanders ended up fumbling the football, and the Eagles would recover it. They would end up getting the ball back. But right when the Philadelphia Eagles got the ball back, there ended up being a weather delay, and the game would be canceled for about a half hour. The game would be canceled for about an hour. And, we're kind of wondering, is this game even going to finish? But by the time the game restarted, it was 11:30 Eastern Time, 8:30 Pacific Time, but they would get back underway. And then, really, the Eagles would get the ball back. Of course, after the Miles Sanders fumble and they recovered it, they started with the ball after the rain delay, and they would go 3 and out. The Cowboys, they would start with a Prescott completion to Ferguson, then another completion to Lamb for a first down, but the drive would end up stalling out. The Cowboys would end up having to punt. The Eagles would get the ball back. They would start with a tush push for a first down. And, of course, that play was on the NFL committee board as a play to be banned from the game, and it was only just about 2 votes away from being completely voted out of the game, but it fell 2 votes short. So, obviously, the play is not illegal, and the Eagles start with a tush push for a first down. Then there was too many men. There was a too many men penalty on the field for the Dallas Cowboys. Then a screen pass followed by a swing pass to Barkley for a first down, but the drive would end up stalling, and the Eagles would have to punt. So now at this point, both sides have traded punts for the first time in the game. The Cowboys, they would start their next drive with a Prescott completion to Lamb, but of course after that, really nothing else happened. The Cowboys would punt. Eagles would go 3 and out. And then, really on a crucial drive of the game, going into the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, I should say, the Cowboys start on a 3rd and 5 with a Prescott completion to Pickens, and the Eagles come up big with a 4th down stop. So that ended up being a big play of the game. CeeDee Lamb, he ended up having a couple of rare drops. He actually had 4 total drops. There was one drop that ended up getting tipped up in the air. Should have been picked off, but it landed on the ground as a incompletion. So, CeeDee Lamb, there was also a play during that drive when Dak Prescott threw deep down the field. He had CeeDee Lamb, and it ended up going through CeeDee Lamb's hands. And then on that 3rd and 5 play, 4th and 5 then, on 4th down, the Cowboys ended up having to go for it on 4th down, and Dak Prescott ended up going deep again to CeeDee Lamb, and once again, CeeDee Lamb diving for it, a little bit more of a difficult catch, and Lamb ended up going through his hands again, and that's what ended up giving the Eagles the 24-20 win over that would give the Philadelphia Eagles the 24-20 win over the Dallas Cowboys. So that being said, what are my takeaways on this game? Well, first off, like I said earlier in the show, really impressed with what I saw, what the Dallas Cowboys were able to do in the game. I thought, Brian Schottenheimer did a great job mixing up play calls, being able to mix the run with the pass, And for the first time, the Cowboys looked like, to me, they had a running game. Now, that could be due to the fact of the spitting incident with Jalen Carter getting ejected. Even before a snap even happened, Jalen Carter got ejected from the game. And it's been a big talked about subject. Of course, the opening kickoff happened. There was an injury timeout. You saw Dak Prescott and Jalen Carter talking a little bit, and you're like, okay, well, what happened there? And then you saw Jalen Carter end up spitting on Dak Prescott, and he got ejected. Well, we didn't know what really happened, but while the Cowboys and Eagles were huddled up, you saw Dak Prescott kind of lean over the shoulder of center Cooper Beebe and left guard Tyler Smith, and he kind of spit at the ground, and then he looked up and winked at Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter ended up coming over and Jalen Carter ended up walking over to the Cowboys huddle. Dak Prescott saw that, and he walked over to him, and Jalen Carter said, "You're going to spit on me?" And Dak Prescott said no, but Jalen Carter ended up spitting on Dak Prescott. He ends up getting ejected, and he gets thrown out of the game immediately. And it totally changed the Cowboys' game plan from there, because their original plan was with Jalen Carter out there, they wanted to hurry up to the line and snap it as quick as possible so that they could throw the football. Well, when Jalen Carter got kicked out of the game, things kind of changed. And, you saw, the Cowboys have some success running the football. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think, seeing the Cowboys being able to run the football, and you saw Schottenheimer with that mentality, run the football first, then throw it. And, the Cowboys, they were having a lot of success. Now, part of that could do because, Jalen Carter was not in there. That could play definitely a part of it. But also, it's nice to see that Brian Schottenheimer is trying to get that run game going, and he did have some success with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders getting that run game going. And, I really liked what I saw from the Cowboys. They had that perfect mixture of the run and the pass. You saw it throughout the whole entire game. I thought that was really good. And I have to tell you, even though, George Pickens may have had a quiet day for his Dallas Cowboys debut. I mean, he only had 2 catches in the game. But for me, I really enjoyed seeing, this Cowboys offense just, being able to have that. Like I said, I know I sound kind of like a broken record, but the mixture of the run and the pass looked really good. I thought, Brian Schottenheimer did a good job of keeping the Eagles defense on their heels. And, the Cowboys offense, they did not look predictable like it was under Mike McCarthy last year. They did not look predictable. And, you saw the Cowboys come out and do a great job. And I mean, CeeDee Lamb, look, we know that CeeDee Lamb uncharacteristically had 4 drops, and he did take responsibility after the game for that. And, if he had been able to hang on to that one deep ball late in the fourth quarter, I think, he would have pretty much, the Cowboys would have gone down the field and got in the end zone, and the Eagles would have had no chance of stopping them because the Eagles defense really had not shown the ability that they could stop that Cowboys offense until about the fourth quarter. It really wasn't until about the fourth quarter when you saw both defenses for both the Cowboys and the Eagles kind of tighten up, make it really hard to run. Barkley wasn't having too much success running in the fourth quarter. Nor was, Javonte Williams having much success running the football in the fourth quarter either for the Dallas Cowboys. But overall, really impressed what I saw on the offensive side of the ball for the Cowboys. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, remains to me to still be a bit of a concern. And we all know going into this game, the biggest topic with the Dallas Cowboys was Jerry Jones trading Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. Now, obviously, if you want to know my opinion of the situation, I mean, first off, I thought it was a horrible move by Jerry Jones to trade Micah Parsons. A big mistake on his part to get rid of Micah Parsons, because really, with number 11 not out there for the Dallas Cowboys, it really showed the lack of a pass rush that the Dallas Cowboys had. Now, I'm not saying the Cowboys defense played terribly. I thought they did some good things well, but the problem is they allowed Jalen Hurts to get outside the pocket. They allowed him to use his feet to pick up first downs, and that's what kind of hurt the Dallas Cowboys, because there was a couple times where they covered up everybody perfectly, but they didn't do a great job containing Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts ended up escaping using his legs, like we all know Jalen Hurts can do, picking up a first down, not just being able to throw it, but also use his legs to pick up first downs. And you saw that last night with Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. And we all know how good Saquon Barkley was. I mean, that's been one of the biggest issues for this Cowboys defense, is being able to stop the run. And, they've not been able to stop the run. It's been a big problem for the Dallas Cowboys over the years. And you saw in this game, Saquon Barkley, he may not, he still had some good runs against that Cowboys defense, but you also saw, he didn't go crazy in the game. It's not like Saquon Barkley went crazy, but, there were still a couple of good runs. Most of the big runs were really, Jalen Hurts using his own legs when things started breaking down in the pocket and there was nowhere to throw the ball. So, other than that, I don't think the Cowboys defense played horribly, but I think, you would like to see the Cowboys defense being able to get off the field a little bit more on third downs. They weren't really able to do that because we all know how good Jalen Hurts is. He can use his legs, but for the most part, I have to say the Cowboys defense, the lack of a pass rush. I mean, the Cowboys kind of started to figure it out in the fourth quarter. They started bringing some blitzes. You saw Trayvon Diggs coming on a corner blitz and ended up disrupting the play. He didn't sack Jalen Hurts, but he did disrupt the play. And, the Cowboys, they kind of started to figure it out late. They started tightening up those gaps. They started to fill those gaps. They started filling up the run lanes. And you saw it became a lot tougher for Saquon Barkley. Sometimes they would blitz their linebackers as well. So, the Cowboys, they started figuring out late, but, you could almost say it was, too much too late for the Dallas Cowboys defense. But they also gave the Cowboys offense a chance to win the game, and the Cowboys offense did not capitalize on that opportunity to go down the field and win the game, when all what it took was a touchdown to win it. But here's the thing. For the most part, I'm impressed with how the offense looked for the Dallas Cowboys. The defense, they're going to have to figure out the pass rush. Donovan Ezeraku, their rookie second-round draft pick out of Boston College, was a non-factor pretty much the whole game. And then, Dante Fowler made a couple plays. You saw the newest Dallas Cowboy defensive tackle, Kenny Clark, who was involved in that trade with Micah Parsons. He came over from the Green Bay Packers in the Micah Parsons trade. You saw him doing a good job filling up those run gaps in the fourth quarter. And, we know Kenny Clark is a pretty good run defender, especially when he was in Green Bay. He was a really good run defender, and you saw Kenny Clark doing that. For the most part, I wouldn't say I was very impressed with, of course, the lack of that pass rush, but also the fact that, the Cowboys couldn't get any pressure just rushing four guys. So they pretty much had to blitz to get any kind of pressure, because Jalen Hurts, if you saw in the game, the Cowboys were playing a lot of man coverage early on, and it really wasn't working, because the Cowboys, they'd rush four guys. They really never got to Jalen Hurts. I mean, when they finally sacked Jalen Hurts, I think it might have been the third quarter. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for the most part, the Cowboys, they got to get that pass rush figured out. It really showed the absence of Micah Parsons not being in Dallas. The lack of a pass rush is definitely an issue for the Dallas Cowboys. So that is one thing they need to get fixed. As far as the Philadelphia Eagles go, I liked everything I saw from the Philadelphia Eagles, to be honest with you. Defensively, maybe in the secondary, they were not that great. But for the most part, you saw the Eagles offense really perform well. They had that one big explosive pass play down the field to Jahan Dotson. You saw the arm strength from Jalen Hurts. He made great decisions out there. Pretty much same thing. I mean, both offenses really were clicking in that first half of the ball game. And really, even well into the third quarter, both offenses were really clicking. And then when the rain delay happened, then you saw the defenses start to figure it out and finding a way to stop the run and pretty much making both offenses one-dimensional. But for the most part, the Eagles, they are the Super Bowl defending champions. And, they still won the ball game, even though their best defensive tackle, Jalen Carter, got ejected from spitting on Dak Prescott before a snap even started. But the Eagles did come out with the win. But the Eagles, they got some stuff they need to figure out, too, defensively. I mean, offensively, they look really good. So the Eagles, they show why they're the Super Bowl defending champions. And, they pull out a big win, and the defense came up big there with those two CeeDee Lamb drops, and in that same drive late in the fourth quarter, and the Eagles defense came up big when need be late in the fourth quarter to win that game. So overall, exciting game, a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching it. I hope you guys enjoy watching it last night. Also, tonight, there was another NFL game happening at 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I mean, you don't want to miss that game. Of course, another great rivalry, another great divisional rivalry to start the season. Chiefs, Chargers, that is tonight on a Friday night, a rare NFL Friday game. There was a bunch of games on Sunday. We have the Giants and Commanders, the Houston Texans and the Los Angeles Rams. Speaking of games that I'm going to go over, you want to tune into my show next week because I will have a recap of the Houston Texans and Los Angeles Rams game for you. That is the next game I'm going to recap with you guys, so make sure you tune in next week for that one. Then we also had the big Sunday night game between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be an exciting one. That game will be on NBC. Don't want to miss that one either. And then Monday night is the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field in Chicago, with Ben Johnson making his Chicago Bears head coaching debut for the Chicago Bears. So a lot of action, a lot of NFL games, got a full slate of NFL games on Sunday. You don't want to miss. Make sure to tune in that game tonight between the Chiefs and Chargers in Sao Paulo, Brazil. In Brazil, that's going to be a fun one. But that's all the time that I have for you guys today. I am Matt. You're listening to the Matt the Stat Sports Podcast. I am your host, Matt the Stat, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon.